Welcome back, everyone, to Making Waves, the show from the Chicago Maritime Museum all about our city's past and present on the waterways. I'm Madeline Crispell, the museum's curator, and with me, as always, is Sari Breslin, the museum's education director.
Thank you, Madeline. We're just about halfway through our season, and this month our special guests are us. We thought we'd update all of you at home on some of the exciting things that have happened at the museum in the 6 months since we began recording Making Waves.
And we thought we'd give you all a bit of a sneak peek into some of the exciting things that we have coming up at the Chicago Maritime Museum this spring and summer, and some exciting things that are happening in the city as a whole. Now, of course, everybody knows when winter finally ends in Chicago, it is time to get outside and get on the water. Now, to start us off today, we have some news you can use. Sari is going to walk us through some important dates to have in your maritime calendars for this spring and summer.
Well, to get us started, yesterday was Earth Day. We hope everybody is being good to our earth, and especially good to our waters here in the city of Chicago. And maybe you've noticed that the bridges have started lifting. I just thought our very first show, which was in September, we mentioned the bridge lifts because they were lifting because it was a really sad time of year because all the boats were going home to their winter storage. Now the bridge lifts, which started on April 19th, they run through June 25th, Wednesdays and Saturdays, weekends at 8 a.m. and weekdays at 9 a.m.
It's a fabulous time to head down if you want to see the boats moving out. There's never a more fun time to be on the river walk than when the bridges are all lifting.
It's like a boat parade. It's really fun. You don't need to be all upset because you got to wait because the bridge is up. It's really exciting. And two of the bridges, the Chicago Bridge at the DuSable at Michigan Avenue, and the Franklin Street Bridge both turned 105 years.
How about that?
Old this year. So
next
happy
time,
birthday.
bring a cupcake to one of those bridges because we're celebrating a couple of bridge birthdays this year in Chicago.
Big ones, 105. The other thing that you're all going to be interested in is the opening of the beaches. That is Friday, May 23rd, which is Memorial Day weekend, and runs through Labor Day from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m.
That's fun.
So
Can't wait to get back on the beach.
So what's happening? Anything good happening at the
Well, there's something
museum?
very fun coming up at the museum, and it's going to be pretty soon. It's happening probably only a couple days after you watch this episode. On Thursday, May 1st at 6 p.m., the Chicago Maritime Museum is going to be opening our next temporary exhibition, the first one we've opened in quite a while. Now, this exhibition is called Maritime Midwest Modern. Now, what this is, it's an exhibition all of architectural photography of the Midwest. Now, ask me, Sari, does that have anything to do with maritime history?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Does it have anything to do with maritime history?
More than you could ever imagine.
Midwest Modern.
Maritime Midwest Modern. So we are working with an architectural photographer named Josh Lipnick. And what he does is he travels the Midwest and he takes photographs of all kinds of buildings. Buildings with architects you might recognize, but also, somewhere you might buy fried fish on the side of the road. Any kind of building, as long as he finds it interesting. Now, what he and I have been working on is putting together an exhibition of all of his photographs that have some kind of connection to the waterways.
Okay.
Something that we sometimes forget in our built environments in the cities of the Midwest is that those cities were built by water. Water shapes our lives in all kinds of ways. Now, we actually have a photo of one of the houses in the exhibition. Isn't that a cool one?
That's really cool. I wonder how many people know where this house is.
Write to us at home and say, but you'll have to do it before I finish the end of this sentence, because that house is in Beverly Shores, Indiana. and it has a really unique history. That is the Florida Tropical House, which was initially commissioned by the state of Florida by a Miami architect, Robert Law Weed, and they were trying to promote tourism to Florida, but also to show off how architecture in Florida could be better suited to tropical climates. And it was commissioned for the 1933 Chicago World's Fair.
Now I get the tie-in.
Uh-huh. Now, there's an even second secret tie-in because when the fair ended, a real estate developer purchased all of those model homes of tomorrow and transported them on barges to Indiana. So those houses made a trip over Lake Michigan to get to where they sit today.
Wow, how many are there?
4. There are 4 different houses of tomorrow that you can see in Beverly Shores today.
Houses of tomorrow that you can see today.
But there's all kinds of fun things that are going to be in that exhibition. Now, you can get tickets on our website. It's $10 for general public, $5 for members. It's going to be a great event. Doors open at 6 p.m. and at 7 o'clock, Josh, the photographer, is going to be there, and he's going to walk us through one of his road trips around the Upper Peninsula, where he took some of the photos in the exhibition of things like the Marquette Ore Docks. It's going to be a great time.
But you can't wait to see those. The Marquette Ore Docks.
No, the Marquette Ore Docks. That's a jewel in the crown of the exhibition, folks.
Very exciting. Also, if you're not aware, the Bridgeport Art Center, that is where the Maritime Museum resides, they have third Fridays, and every third Friday, all of the artist studios are open. You can go. It's so much fun if you've never been there. It's a great, again, free event. You can just show up. But also, the Maritime Museum is open to the public on third Fridays at the Bridgeport Art Center. What do we have coming up at the...
So we have a bunch of really cool programs coming up for the next 3 third Fridays. I can tell you about them.
Tell us.
In May, the third Friday of May, our eagle-eyed viewers at home will know what date that is. We have one of the museum's very own volunteers, Joe Gamble, Voyageur Joe.
Voyageur Joe.
One of our all of our volunteers are our most valued volunteers, but one of our volunteers who helps us with school visits will be talking about the role of Chicago and the Civil War Navy in the 1860s.
You know, when I think of the Civil War, I don't think of Navy.
Yeah, you don't think of Navy, and you don't necessarily think of Chicago and the Navy either.
No. And so, I mean, when I think of the Civil War, I think it was all like hand-to-hand.
Right, you're thinking of Antietam, your Gettysburgs.
Yeah.
But in fact, the Civil War Navy was one of the most pivotal points that moved things in the Union's favor. And Joe is going to do a really interesting job of talking about Chicago's role in that.
Yeah, he's a very interesting person. He knows a lot. Like Madeline said, he helps us out when we have school groups come. He talks to them all about canoeing and early fur traders.
And you can probably see him on the river year-round. Yes. He is out in his canoe. Now, in fact, in August, when we celebrate Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable and his role in the founding of Chicago, Joe is part of the procession that brings a wreath via canoe on the Chicago River and delivers that to the bust of Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable.
Oh, wow.
So there are a lot of places you can see Joe besides our wonderful Third Friday lecture, which you can visit in person or online.
Well, that's really interesting. You get to meet a famous voyageur.
A voyageur.
And what about June? What do we have in June?
We have another fabulous program in June. This is Larry McClellan. He's a historian who writes also about the Civil War period, the antebellum period, and he is going to be talking about the role Chicago played, again, in the Underground Railroad. Now, something people don't necessarily think about, again, we have a lot of conceptions of the Underground Railroad that are on land. You know, we think of people making these dramatic escapes in the night. we don't necessarily think about them taking ferries and barges to get to freedom. But in fact, the waterways were a huge route that many people took to get to the north and then to Canada during the Underground Railroad.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I can't wait till you talk about something special. your collections.
We have another Underground Railroad story that's going to be coming back later in our broadcast today.
Yes. So, but let's get to July.
Now, July, we have Josh Lipnick, that same photographer who is doing our exhibition with us. He's going to come in and he's going to do a talk all about sort of vacation destinations and recreation on the Great Lakes. So we'll be looking at some of those same buildings that are featured in the exhibition, but also some new ones that aren't in the exhibition, and we'll be diving into his collection of postcards and ephemera.
So are these houses like VRBOs, or are they museums?
Verbo. I've heard that ad on the train. Most of them are privately owned. They're kept up. But the exhibition has a huge variety of different buildings that are at a variety of different statuses today. Some of them are still actively lived in. I mean, River City, the Bertrand Goldberg complex on the Chicago River, and you could buy a condo in that today.
Yeah.
But some of them are some of the most endangered buildings in the Midwest because we have not always done a great job of preserving our maritime heritage.
Wow, that's really interesting. So then, what are you doing this summer?
What am I doing this summer?
What are you doing this summer?
Besides filming a couple fabulous episodes of Making
I know,
Waves,
but you are always so busy talking.
I have a couple talks that I want to bring up because if you're at all interested in the sort of topics that we talk about here on Making Waves, these may be of interest to you as well. The first one I want to highlight is called Women on the Water. Now, you have two places to see me give this talk on amazing women sailors like Sari. Unlike me, I get seasick. You can see that first in Milwaukee this May as part of the Midwest Women's Sailing Conference, and then I'll be giving that talk again in August in South Haven, Michigan, at the Michigan Maritime Museum as part of their Lunch and Learn series. And that's going to focus, yes, on women sailors, but also on people like the first woman captain on the Great Lakes. And we have a photo of Georgia Stebbins. She was one of the earliest female lighthouse keepers on the Great Lakes. You can see behind her the North Point Lighthouse in Milwaukee. Now, in 1873, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis. She was living in New York City, and her doctors told her she had to get out of the city if she wanted to survive. And so she moved in with her parents. Her father was the North Point Lighthouse keeper. She immediately takes over some of his duties, and she herself would be the lighthouse keeper from 1888 to 1907.
Wow.
Incredibly early. Now, fun fact for our artistically minded people out there, that's the only lighthouse in the country in a park designed by Richard Law Olmsted. Did I get that name right? The landscape designer behind Central Park and the 1893 Chicago World's Fair.
Oh, wow, that is very interesting. What are the actual dates? You said May and August.
Yes, that's such a good question. May 18th is the conference date. I believe August is August 13th, but I'm not sure we've had that confirmed. But you know what? You'll be able to learn more on our website.
Well, all kinds of information.
Michigan Maritime Museum's website, too.
Well, that's really exciting. And any place else you're talking?
There's one other that's a little more local, a little easier for our Chicago audience to get to at a little place called the Art Institute. That's... we've heard of that one.
That old thing?
Now, this is a talk that you would not expect necessarily. Why is the Maritime Museum curator getting involved with a talk at the Art Institute? Now, they're doing a summer exhibition on the artist Gustav Caillebotte. can see one of his most famous paintings here, The Rainy Day in Paris. Now, that's a painting that we're familiar with. The one right next to it is one that I'm going to be talking about, The Regatta at Argenteuil, because Gustave Caillebotte, along with being a very well-known Impressionist artist, was also a sailor. He built boats, he raced boats, he was very involved in building up Paris's sailing culture in the late 19th century.
Wow.
And I will be doing a talk for them on July 17th, just 2 days before the race to Mackinac begins in Chicago.
Wow, that's really exciting.
And we will be talking all about the history of sailing in the 19th century in Paris and in Chicago. Now, fun fact, that painting, The Regatta at Argenteuil, I am the person who narrates that stop on the audio tour at the Art Institute. So if you get tired of hearing French accents, go over to the Regatta at Argenteuil and listen to that stop, because it will be my dulcet Midwestern tones.
Oh, man. I love the Art Institute. It's one of my very favorite museums.
What's your favorite painting at the Art Institute? Do you have just one, Sari? I'm curious.
Wow.
Big question.
That is a really big question.
I have an answer that's a cheating answer, because it's not a painting at all. It's the Thorn Miniature Rooms in the basement of the Art Institute.
Well, you had something to do with that, too.
I curated an exhibition on the Thorn Miniature Rooms up in Lake Forest a few years ago. But I love miniatures, and no better place to visit the art, craft, and history of miniatures than the Chicago Maritime Museum. Because not only do we have a number of model ships on display in the museum, we also have an entire model ship shop.
Ship shop.
Ship shop.
Yes.
Now, we have a call to action for anyone at home who may have a friend, a relative, a family member themselves who is interested in building model ships. We are looking for a volunteer to help us out at the museum building these model ships. So get in touch with the Chicago Maritime Museum if that sounds like you.
And a carver friend of mine was just at the museum, and we're trying to get him to come in and do it. It's a fun shop. We have models just waiting to be built.
Waiting for you to build them.
Just waiting to be built.
Now, Sari, we've had a lot of interesting things happen at the museum in the past 6 months. As our education director, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit. What are some of the fun field trips, educational groups that we've had since we started recording our show?
Wow. There's nothing better than to have school groups come into the museum. And every time a group comes in, the first thing they always say is, well, we never knew this was here. Why did we never know about this? One of the reasons we are doing this show is that we can get it out there that this gem, this, little museum with a big heart is in a great place. The Bridgeport Art Center, real easy to get to. Free parking, only place in Chicago where there's free parking. And
now, Sari, you mentioned it's easy to get to the museum. It's become even easier in these last 6 months, especially if you're a school group.
Yeah,
Could you tell us why that is?
Because we were lucky enough to get money that is just earmarked for buses. So a lot of school groups can't go on field trips because they can't afford the buses. And after the pandemic, the buses really went sky high. So just call us up. We have money. We have money that we will grant you to bring your school group into the museum. You'll have a great time. As you can only imagine what a great curator Madeline is. She gives a tour, and then we have projects to work with your students so that we can handle bigger groups, because it is a small museum, but we just break them up, and sometimes we break them into 3 groups. One goes on tour with Madeline, one is with our voyageur, and one is with me. And this last group, they got to learn how to draw a canoe or a steamship or sailboats, and then they just rotate.
Now, Sari, are these school groups only appropriate for history classes?
No, we are full steam. We talk about everything. We talk about the environment, we talk about art, we talk about caring for the environment, you name it, we'll talk about it.
So all of you teachers, I don't care what subject you're teaching, bring your classes down to the Maritime Museum.
We have a group, I said repeat offenders, but they're a wonderful group that came with fourth graders. They're studying energy. And so, we talk about the progress of energy through the evolution of vessels on the waterways. So we will tie in your subject matter. Just try and stump us.
We love to be stumped. Bring your math class to the Maritime Museum.
Not for me.
We'll figure it out.
Not for me.
Well, they can count all the boats. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not the math person here. But what is really interesting, which I can't wait for you to tell everybody about, is our collections. My favorite story so far.
So this is something very close to my heart. This is a story, a mystery that I have been working on basically since I started at the Maritime Museum. This is a collection of 5 paintings that came to the museum in September of 2023, right after I started. And they came to us unattributed. We didn't know who did these paintings. They were totally unsigned. You can see one of these paintings here. This is of a paddle wheel steamer on the Chicago River. And I was fascinated because I had never seen anything like these before. Now, my research led me to an attribution, an artist named James Bolivar Needham, who painted in the same styles, subject matter, materials, all of the above as these 5 paintings in our collection. And as I started to delve into his history, I found even more to be fascinated by, because James Bolivar Needham, although he spent his entire adult life here in Chicago painting these beautiful views of the river and ships, he was born in 1850 in Chatham, Ontario. Now, he was born at what was considered then the end of the Underground Railroad. His parents were born into slavery in Virginia, and they escaped right before Needham was born himself. His father turned the roof of their dwelling into a raft, which they took up the river out of West Virginia, over the Ohio River. They joined the Underground Railroad and are ferried to freedom in Canada, where James is born. Now, he winds up becoming a deckhand on Great Lakes lumber schooners, and he grows to love the scenes on the docks and on the river. And he settles permanently in Chicago after the Civil War at age 17 in 1867. And until his death in 1931 at the age of 81, he painted every day. He worked as a janitor, a caretaker, a gardener, and he painted in the morning, at night, in order to support his artistic practice. Now, how do we attribute paintings to somebody who never signed the front of his work? How do we figure that out? Luckily, Needham left us some clues, because while he never signed the front of his work, he was painting for himself. He didn't need other people to know who did his paintings. He already knew. On the back of all of his paintings, he had a very distinctive red diamond shape with the dimensions and the date. We have a photo here of one of our 5 paintings where you can see the back next to it. I'm happy to say all 5 of ours have this distinctive red diamond shape. Now, I've only dipped my toes into the fascinating story of James and his time in Chicago and his artwork. But you'll just simply have to come down to the Chicago Maritime Museum from 10 to 4, Tuesdays through Sundays, and visit these incredible Impressionist paintings in person. Now, James Bolivar Needham is not as well remembered today as he should be. He really should be a household name.
Absolutely.
When we talk about the great Chicago artists, people like Laredo Taft and Louis Sullivan, we should be talking about James Bolivar Needham in the same breath.
Yeah, but the work that Madeline did is just unbelievable. And the best part of the story is that WGN knew about this, and they all had the paper on the back of the frames. WGN came in when Madeline took the paper off to see if they were right. Her face was just like
You can see how relieved
Christmas
I am that I'm not
morning.
having my Al Capone vault Geraldo Rivera moment.
It was-
I was very excited that we could have these 5 paintings by this incredible artist in our collection.
it was really, really special.
Now, we're wrapping up soon here, but Sari, before we do, we have a very special program coming up on Making Waves next month.
We do.
And I feel like you are a perfect person to tell us about that special program.
So the special program is going to be the Chicago Fire Department Air Sea Rescue, because like I said, we're getting ready for the water season, and we want everybody to be safe and secure. And so a certain lieutenant from the fire department, my son, is going to be here in May to talk to us all about the role of the fire department in rescue.
I can't wait for that.
Me too.
Now again, if any of the things we have talked about today are interesting to you, if you're interested in attending one of these Third Friday lectures, if you want to buy a ticket to our exhibition opening on May 1st, if you want to come work in our model ship shop, all you have to do is visit ChicagoMaritimeMuseum.org, and you can find information out about all of this. And if you're not already following us on social media, why not?
Yeah.
Follow us on social media.
Yes.
Now,
Thank you.
always, thank you, and go enjoy the water, Chicago.
Yes, thank you.